I find that, that my role of knowing by God's design, by his natural design, and that as a prophetically gifted person, because I didn't ask for the gift, I didn't even want it. But, years ago, he gave it to me or granted it to me. And so at this point in time, you end up going, I'm pretty happy from my relationship with God and my just personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I said, I'm pretty content with that, but I don't suffer what other people suffer all the time. And that's the plaudits and the praises and the, accolades of fellow Christians. Mostly I still get for all these years. Because our job as prophetic people is to be like an advanced team. We're the first on the fields of the Lord, the planting fields, the battlefields, and we've added a couple of fields to those since then, knowing what's coming. And so I still take most of my assurances, my feelings of worth from just the heavenly realm. And it's not easy to achieve. That's why it's better to raise up mature prophetic people than just saying I'm prophetically gifted. There's a pretty long process. It takes time. And in many cases, you have to give in to taking age. Like you have to, grow older to make a really good prophetic person. It's just the way it is. I'm sorry.
Have we recorded?
It's on.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
on.
that's that.
Yeah,
Oh, so no, this is great.
We should maybe do an intro.
Yeah,
Why don't you fire away?
we're here. Welcome back to Great Pages podcast. Where are we?
We're in Kansas City,
We're here in Kansas City,
out town,
Missouri, or Kansas?
Missouri.
Missouri.
We're in the Kansas side.
We are.
Yes, this is I just learned that.
Strike that.
Yeah, I'm
I
like-
don't know
I'm
where
like-
I went.
So confused.
We're back and forth.
Oh, that's what we're crossing?
staying in Missouri, but we're driving over to the Kansas
I
side.
understand why they did that. It was dumb, but
What the word Kansas City? The name
Yeah.
of the city?
Yeah,
it's
we're-
like,
I don't even know what state I'm
it's
in.
like-
we should've
I just found this out on a plane ride over, so I was like,
No,
no, we're going to
he's
Kansas City,
talking about
Missouri.
He's talking about where the actual
The state
location
line.
is. We should be in, oh, you're talking about geography.
Yeah, I'm talking about how they just.
Like the founding
Where they
fathers.
said, my cows are on Missouri and your cows are on Kansas.
We've been wanting to have
I think that's how it came about.
conversations. If you listen to our podcast or read any of our book, you've heard the name Neil Cole and Dezi Baker several times. Hopefully they'll be with us a lot more in a space like this, just to muse over these ideas of APEST, Ephesians 4 stuff, kind of the origins of organic church planning. I tell people all the time when we talk about brave cities, Dezi, the subtitle of the book is The Archaeology, Artistry, and Architecture of Kingdom Ecosystems. And I say here, like living right now, there's guys that have been doing this almost as long as I've been alive. Dezi Baker's one of them. He's in Globe, Arizona. We're going to hear some of his story, but we also might just kind of bob and weave in conversation about how the prophetic and the apostolic work together. We've already had bombs dropped before we even started. So we're at the microchurch conference. None of us are doing anything. So we just decided to get in a room and get some mics and talk.
It is rare.
So yeah, it's
I was curious, so like just when we were shooting the bull, you saying that prophetic is not that high on the Neil Cole scale right now.
Right.
But how many years ago did Neil come to Alton?
which time, but he
Well,
came the last time was 2 years
Time we
ago.
were praying in tunnels.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple of years ago. But I don't know if you remember. I mean, you were working some spiritual stuff on us as a team, but what came out of that prayer time was this continual push towards the youth in our city. So everybody sees what we're doing as a coffee shop or blah, 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 business stuff. But the words, and since you came, it's stayed that way. And most of our team has naturally moved into working with kids without even, like, nobody was really trying. It just is, and so,
Well, they've come to us.
yeah.
So we have, like we've always done, we've embedded ourselves where, you know, where the line is, where the pain is. But then the young people have come to us. So
It was probably 2 months ago. We were trying to get to the kids. It was like the sense of like, how do we get to them and really provide what we need to provide? And we haven't made any money on the business stuff. We survived and kept it going, though, because there were things we went and need some resource or youth center, whatever we're going to do. But I just mentioned to Taylor a few weeks ago, like, hey, would we ever consider selling all of our business stuff, the post and everything? And our team met about that, and everybody was like, yeah, let's do it. So we're in the middle of some negotiations to potentially reboot the whole Lantern network for the kids. But that, I mean, you were, I don't know if it was laying foundation, but you set some new foundations for our movement when you came. So yeah, it was a big deal.
well, and gave permission. I maybe that's not the right framing, but I really feel like part of the apostolic magic is this.
You validate and give permission.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Which
also
is freedom in Christ.
When you say the church hinges upon the apostle and prophet, if somebody just says why, since the church in our day has been more hinged on the pastor teacher, when we just read the words of scripture, if somebody just asks you, why does it hinge on the apostle and prophet? What do you guys say?
Well, because the apostle and prophet are said to be the foundation of the church by Paul in Ephesians 2. Jesus hands the keys to the kingdom to an apostle and says, upon this rock, Peter, I will build my church. So there's a foundational element to that gift. And part of the reason is the apostles, the prophets are a seeing gift. They see, and I shouldn't steal Desi's words, but they see the past, what went before us. They see in hindsight. They see an insight into what's going on now in people's lives and in the spiritual world, and foresight into what's coming. So they are a navigational director for the apostolic action. So there's prophetic intelligence that leads to apostolic foundation of how empowerment, works. So what took place when I was with you guys is we looked for a demonic stronghold that was affecting your region, and we shut that. So there's spiritual things at play that released this calling for the youth that wasn't, you weren't able to even feel like we could do that before. That wasn't me. That was just shutting the faucet off on demonic stuff.
Time saver, real time saver.
It does save a lot of time.
That's part of what we do. We travel together all the time, and
Is that binding and loosening?
it is. Well, it's closing and opening.
Yeah, opening and shutting.
Yeah. When you say binding, that connotates a language that makes, especially in the more charismatic half of the church, they think they know what that means, and it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actually shutting down access points for not demonic, but fallen angels.
The unseen realm, of fallen things.
So we're dealing with immortal beings. We're not going to kill them. We're not going to throw them in jail. All we want to do is slow down their work.
Slow down the work of the enemy, speed up the church.
That's what we do.
Rather than the other way around, which I think we've been under for a long time now.
You're not going to get any of this material from Joe Rogan.
No,
It's about to.
because he doesn't do what we
You're
do.
never going to get a quarter of that audience, but go ahead.
That's true.
This is what.
Yeah, I know, a quarter would be
Maybe he watches your show. Who knows?
Joe, we're more than willing to come on.
So you would say that's not by like, so in Matthew 16, Jesus is going, I'll build my church, gates of hell will not prevail. Then there's this, I'll give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. then you're.
Whatever you say.
So what would binding and loosening?
So, so there's another place where they talk about binding the strong. And usually I think that's in terms of if you're dealing with a person who has this demonic influence in their life, you need to bring some strength to it to push them out. And it's a little bit different passage than the Matthew one does say binding, but it's in reference to gates. You don't bind gates, you open gates or you shut gates. That's the context. And so the authority he gives them, the keys that he gives them, keys represent authority, is that you can shut the gates of hell and you can open.
So you're just rephrasing, binding and loosening, you're just rephrasing the closing and opening.
Yeah, but it's not just rephrasing it, because like if you do it long enough, you get older and you do that kind of work long as an AP team working together, then you actually get to see the fruit of that kind of work, as opposed to a binding and loosening to opening and closing these points of time. These, I don't want to use the word portal, but they're like that. It's how it's access to this realm from the unseen realm.
Yeah.
So they have access to our realm, but we don't typically have access to theirs. Same planet, same everything. It's just more like a parallel realm.
This talk has been all but lost.
Yes.
But
one time known.
What?
One time known in Christianity, like in the early parts of Christianity, it was well known.
There's a reason for that, though. I mean, if Satan can get us to stop paying attention, I mean, what's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled?
Or you can just keep us just striving.
Yeah.
And like even around Alton, like we're so aware now, these things have been existing in this town for so long, or a globe, Arizona. Like you get to where you realize you are powerless to make movement unless there are some things that shift in the spirit realm.
Yeah, and everything's so different. Like where I live in the Southwest, or I live in the Wild West, which is Arizona, and that territorial kind of spiritual warfare is very. I mean, you have to look to the ethos, of the area and stuff. So you're like, well, it's a desert. So we have tons of desert fathers, who we can rely upon within Scripture, and we can look to. But then it's a pathos. It's the cultural experience. It's what's gone on there, and so you have to look to that. What has the enemy been doing over all these years there? And then from there we ask God and we petition God and say, then how do we slow that down? And how do we stop it in many cases? Again, we can't kill it or destroy it, but we can just push that down long enough for something new and vibrant in, a Christ-centered church community, your region or whatever. Can you church a region and build it up?
Can you give even a specific example, like from your years in Globe, where you actually saw the fruit of?
Yeah, it's hard to be tangible, because you do it in a way that because we are I don't claim to be a prophet. I don't claim to be a prophet. I'm prophetically gifted. I serve the church. And I mean that in no uncertain terms. You're like, I'm a part of 2,000 years of church history with prophetically gifted people. So I don't think that's a role that I seek to grasp. I know it's not, but I do, I absolutely believe that I am gifted at it. And then I seek to mature in it. I mean, I do my work, study hard, work hard, I practice hard, I do everything. So if we are, as prophetic people of times past, if we have any linkage to all of that, it's that we are first on the field. So then you work hard, you're in those places. And so you can pick a community, any community, and you can say, okay, then what do I see here? And you can, move into a community that's depressed, it's low income, it's got high rate of crime, there's nothing going on there, and you're like, okay, then like John, who John said, I see Jerusalem, coming down from heaven. Then you picture your community as if it were, because you have that ability as a prophetic person. I can envision something that's so big that nobody could believe in it. Then you're like, where do I start? And so then in a very, again, you have all those aspects of what it is to be a true Christian. You're just gifted a little bit more. So you're like, well, then if I see a corner that needs to be cleaned up, then I'll clean up that corner.
Yeah.
I get to work. I open new businesses. We
But even
open stuff.
the cleaning up of the corner is a binding and a loosening act.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, like when we try to articulate this to
People.
people, we say there's so much in the book. Formulas don't work.
No.
It's funny because we actually got a review. It was a good review, but there were some negative phrases in the review. And one of them really struck me. The reviewer said, these guys, something like these guys think their formula is the one, which blew my mind because we say at least 4 times, this is not a formula. There is no formula. It's imperative that you don't travel the country to find a formula. This is why we think that the apostolic and the prophetic are so important, is because typically I've found that, so respond to this, I found that people, Jesus people, kingdom people with giftings that are outside of those two are looking for a formula.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
They want you to say, so
Tell me what to do.
tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Because they want it and their hearts are,
Where do
That's-
you start? That thing you just like the
Mhm.
where do you start? Like, but like no, like what's step 1
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's step 1?
and then 2, right?
And if I
Yeah.
follow that formula, then I can trust that. Because the hardest thing for Christianity is, and I get accused talking about Europe, talking about being, in your book, they got this kind of a good review, but people often accuse me of, many things. But most of them is our idea that we're not looking for God's perfect will, because we're fallen creatures too. We're just fallen creatures who are saved by Jesus Christ. It doesn't take away the fact that, we have this sinful nature inside of us. And so you're like, well, we don't like in our community, we don't really seek to find God's will. We're not waiting for him to tell us what to do. We just do it first.
yeah.
And then because we believe we're actually always in his will.
We just
Because we're
move-
children of God.
move at his cadence.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we, again, the definition, I think that always needs to be like a foundation. That's where the A and the P works out, is that we are a movement. Even the 2,000 years in Christianity, it's not a noun. Church is not a noun, and so we are actually a movement, and we move quickly and we change often in midstream based on the fact that you're like, well, that went completely wrong. Woo!
Well,
I didn't even know that we were thinking back
Or
then.
even in our setting, it's not even that you missed it the first time. It's just when we say there's archaeology and artistry and architecture, that's not even a progression.
Yeah.
Part of it has to be progressive, but our kind of reorientation towards the kids, it wasn't that we made a mistake in doing the post commons early on. That's how we got the piece of the city.
Right.
But you're always doing archaeology. You're always sniffing around for, what God's saying. If you make a tact or an adjustment, we should be doing that.
Well, one of the reasons I think the church is so enamored with trying to find a model with 5 steps to accomplish these results is because we haven't started on an AP foundation.
Right.
Because the apostle brings this can do, and the prophet brings this can hear. So when you lay this foundation, it's a listening to Jesus and doing what he says. When that's happening, people don't need the 5 steps. They just need what's the next step.
They feel very comfortable without those
So,
steps.
so real quick, that's, you know this, but I want you to kind of muse up. That's what we call a kingdom ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah.
Is you're establishing an economy that now we can come and function in.
Right.
So now we don't have to ask you, what do? We just do.
Yeah.
We go to work, we live in our neighborhoods, we clean our corner, we plant a garden, and something, for me at this point, something that is impossible to articulate in a formulaic way happens. So that is, I want you to jump in there, but that is why we're saying we're looking for the artists, we're looking for the pioneers, because I think that what's happened in Globe, which we got to get at least a little But what's happened in Globe is now there is a city, not Globe.
It's a city town. It's a town, except for the most part.
It's not very big, but neither is
Yes.
Alton.
But I'm not
Yeah.
even talking about
Yeah.
Globe.
Yeah.
Okay. But sometimes when people hear the word city, you're like, oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, I'm talking about a different city.
Yeah, region is what.
There's an economy, a
Yeah.
city that you have been a part of architecting and uncovering, that now others can just come and practice in.
Right.
And the hard part about practicing in Babylon, under Babylon rule, is you're always negotiating. Whereas when you walk into
Mhm.
a kingdom ecosystem, you just begin to practice.
Mhm.
Can y'all like muse on that for a second? Give it better language or?
I think that ultimately models, step-by-step models and paths, and even at the greater level, the institutions that we build are all substitutes for this intimate connection with Christ. And that's a problem. It's a huge problem.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we're so much of the church is longing for those models and those steps is because they don't have that intimacy. They don't hear his voice
Mhm.
and have the empowerment to do it. They don't have that. So they know they need something. So they substitute that with all this other
I
stuff.
ran into a guy a few minutes ago, and I just assumed that his heart is totally pure in his statement. But haven't seen him in a while. I was like, "Oh, how you doing?" And he's like, "So good, man. I needed this." And that thought is just interesting to me because I want to say this again, and I'm trying to provoke y'all, but I don't think you need this. I think you just hear God's voice and you move at his cadence.
Speaking about us.
But
Yeah.
no, what I'm not this in particular, I'm saying the substitute.
Or what people really need.
And I
Go
think
ahead.
I think I could. I haven't done this for a long time because you can't really see the fruits of your labor in this kind of work. It takes time, and we're not, as American culture and North American culture, I think, Christian culture, then this isn't our church expression. It's not normally our church expression. It's a little more immediate. We want some kind of gratification where we'd say, oh, I think God is pleased with our worship, or he's pleased with our prayers, and he's pleased with our actions. And so we break down action into, hey, we have a food court, or something, things like that. But we're in a more holistic understanding of it, and we're trying to change an entire region. It does take time. And so the current, right where we're at right now, 2024, still our current churched culture has the wrong principles of the same faith we all serve, same scripture we all serve. They just they haven't done enough work to say, hey, let's change the principles to say that it becomes a part of who you are. Everybody has a religious experience, even talking about our just recent conversation. In my personal, what I have adopted as my religious experience is I don't need other people to believe what I believe in order for me to believe it. Because you almost have to be there. Even 2,000 years of Christ's history, God is actually wanting us to do something different. So we change all the time in our definition of who we are, where I live, and what we teach around the world in terms of revitalizing villages and towns and cities and regions. And that is and this is just our thing. Again, you don't have to believe this. It's not, but we call them more like ark-like communities because we build something on dry land that is based on that's going to take a long time, but we're going to base it on something that hasn't ever yet happened in the history of the world, and that is the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Just to anybody that's ever heard us say that, we're saying it because Dezi taught us that. So we write that in our book. We
Okay.
reference you.
The art community
Yeah,
thing.
No, then I'll read it because I only read books.
No, but
That's why I
Only read
mentioned
books that I
Dezi.
write.
Yeah.
it's we talked about this the first time we met.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a truth to that.
Cities
But
of refuge.
But it's hard to turn that into principles that you can define. So you have to say, we do more by doing less. We're not looking for the plaudits and the praises of men. It's a whole bunch of principles that define who we are in Christ. as we're changing a region. But we don't wear Jesus on our sleeve. We believe, in a pattern of cultivating and planting and tending and growing and tending, which is mostly God, but we participate in it. And we're looking forward to a harvest that is to come. We see people saved along the way, but we still firmly, strongly, absolutely believe in more of a miraculous harvest that is yet to come in our region. And we work hard towards it. So you've got to change your principles of who you are as Christ in a way that you don't do this work at the cost of your personal well-being, but for the sake of it. Because God, I guarantee you, all the people out there who are doing this kind of work and are just new at it, or it's in their infancy, one of the first things that's going to take you out is it threatens you and your personal well-being. But it almost sometimes seems adulterous or careless to do what you're doing. And you're like, no, you just got to redefine what personal well-being, not as the world sees it, but for who we are as Christ-centered people. And once you figure out what those principles are, then you give into them, and then you'll see your work change, probably what you guys are doing. Well, I know you guys, so I know you've been at it for a while too, and it's probably based on the same principles. You just use different words to describe it. But that's necessary. You have to change your entire Christianity.
We talk about, we've written and talked some about songwriting. I was a songwriter, sometimes still am, but was very aspiring in college, and even studied music and took songwriting courses. And I remember being in this 2-week workshop where you had the majority of the people that were there were probably 25 of us. The majority of the people that were there were looking for the formula for a hit song. And there is a formula.
Yeah.
And it's almost always a 1, 4, 5, 6 chord structure with the 2 in the bridge, and you wanna keep it under 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And it has to connect on a melodic level with the average listener that is not interested in the lyric. They're interested in the melodic experience. And then there was another group that were so interested in how to authentically express themselves through a song.
Right.
And there was no principle for that. It was only a fumbling effort of language to say, well, and all the things you just said, we do less, not more. None of it helped other than it inspired. But there's almost a perfect principle for a hit song. A formula.
Well, formula. So
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
jump in here a little bit, because just listening to all this, I think that section of the book's music, not math, kind of thing. There is math, right? Or the model or the formula. But you're and so I have this thing I've said, just thinking about heroes of faith that we've looked to, and I'll just say the Christian, I'll say the path, the walk, the life can't be prescribed. I would say you cannot prescribe what to do. It can't be done, but it can be described.
Yeah.
So you look at all of these, you can talk about Mama T, you can talk about Bonhoeffer, different context, different place, different action, faith, fleshed out. So you could describe it and maybe extract lessons, principles, whatever. But then now the risk of faith is now in this moment, I have to do whatever now in this context, whatever. And so as I'm listening, I wanted to identify a little bit, because it can be described, right? And I think there's a bit of a curse of knowledge right here. Cause so I'm not familiar with can you describe a little bit of your context? Because I think maybe you guys know, I'm sitting here going there, and I'm just thinking of maybe someone listening or watching that doesn't have context for a description of your context and where you're at. Can you give a little bit of a sketch of that?
Really good.
Let me
Please,
set up
please,
and
please.
then
Thank
give it
you.
to Dezi,
Good.
because he's the one
Perfect.
who's pulled it off.
Perfect.
So we started together just following Jesus into the harvest fields, and before people used language like microchurch or things like that, we were just doing intimate relationships that multiply. And we were looking to start a movement. And God used that, and we did.
Yeah, you did.
We did. And so that's how we got connected 30 years ago. And then
30?
And that was even pre-organic church.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the version of organic church.
organic church came out of that. That was our language that came out of the experience.
Pre-missional community.
It's really based on God's organic nature. That's why.
So it's really the bedrock of this entire movement that's happened since then, honestly.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but you just did. So, yeah, let that be known.
I don't know if you guys know, but I know what's happened in my last 30 years.
Thank you for that.
The missional movement.
Well, it's a way. You both know that there were ones that came before you.
Yes, absolutely.
But in this current way,
Base communities or
we feel is super important to tell people when we're talking about all this stuff that's happening is that we're standing on your shoulders. And we are trying, we told Dr. Perkins this when we were with him 6 months ago. The last thing we said when we were leaving, because we had a holy time with him, we just said, we just want you to know, Dr. Perkins, that our lives are committed to try to carry on what you've started. And so that's kind of what, y'all would say the same thing.
Yeah, because like recently, well, not so recently, but George Patterson died. So,
Right.
but we actually didn't know all our connections with them. You're like, oh my gosh. So, very happy for him. Very, sad for us because I don't know if I want to live in a world where he's not in it. Even though we didn't have any really, I no longer have a connection with or had a connection with them. But still, you're like, no, those are the fathers of the faith. Our personal faith.
That's right.
Guys are for us.
This way.
Yeah.
So
we got to see this movement catalyze and multiply and spread around the world. And then God spoke to Dezi to move to a place called Globe. And, he went there for like 2 years, didn't have a job. He just lived there watching things, listening to God, like a prophet in the wilderness.
eating
It is.
wild berries and locusts.
Well, that's not totally untrue.
And
Can I jump in on just that real quick?
Yeah.
Just so are you guys familiar with permaculture?
yes.
Okay, so like in permaculture, there's this it just jumped out to me, like there's this, especially like with the like living on a land, like working with the land or whatever. A lot of times people will go to like say a new chunk of land they want to plant and harvest and work with, but they'll just watch it as opposed to like going like here's some, and I'm just curious if there's some overlap with that. Like it just like immediately made me think of the
So in
practice
spiritual
of just,
sense, definitely permaculture would relate.
that's like a
I think their actual farming practices may not be permaculture.
Sure. No, I have rows.
No, it's regenerative. We do regenerative ranching.
Yeah.
So you guys do
it's a
agriculture
branching.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
interesting.
just real quick, so you can add it, but another.
But I meant it's metaphor. Yeah.
Archaeology.
No, it is. It is a good.
It's archaeology too, like this city.
Yes, it's a
Yeah, you have
same
to like,
kind of
oh, the
mindset.
water
I
wants
look
to
at
go
it,
over
but I have
here.
to stare at it for a long time till you realize, I can see this.
You just sit and
If it's-
watch. And
I can
kinda
see
like-
this as a regenerated.
It's just
discern.
important when we interrupt and count because it goes against all modern church planting strategy.
Right.
Here's the
I'm the
drop
apostle sitting there going, Desi, what are you going to do, man? Do something. It's been 2 years.
Oh yeah, it's your thing.
And he's not.
Yeah.
He's just listening and watching. And
Yeah.
and you have to know something about the town. Globe is a mining town in the Old West, which when he moved there, they had a hanging tree and an old jail and saloon. And the oldest saloon,
is
Yeah.
So it's the oldest continuously working saloon in Arizona.
okay.
So
So
it's never been
with the doors,
not
you
been.
know, it's the
Wow.
Wild West where you have a show.
So you said Wild West. It's like that's
It
literally
is the
it's like-
Wild
It is the Wild West. It's like
And
the
it's-
home of
and it's a
Billy the
town-
Kid.
that was
Okay.
dark, where people don't die naturally.
Pause. The home of Billy the Kid.
Yeah, he's from that region. It's hard to tell, because a lot of those
And
guys.
Geronimo.
But it's where regulators and the sheep
Oh,
and the cattlemen had the wars and stuff.
Wow.
So
Great.
we have in Arizona we have tombstones.
You just need to have
Everybody
this
knows
That's
tombstones.
yeah.
But it's mostly in our region where that kind of.
And so this is the place where Anton LaVey, the writer of the Satanic Bible, would go for his vacations. He would summer there, or winter, I don't know, probably winter. You wouldn't want to go there in the summer.
Yeah, vampires.
But he would go there, and that's where he wrote the Satanic Bible,
In Globe.
in Globe. And it's a place where people don't die very naturally. It's the murder capital of.
Yeah.
It's a horrible, dark place.
Well,
until
I like it.
the kingdom of
Well, one of the principles that we live by is that, what other people call home, you shouldn't call hell. Like missionary, you're not on a missional program where you say, hey, yeah, we're going to this hell spot. And you're like, no, it's just home for us. That's what we did. We moved there.
You move there and you live there.
Well, you could flip that too.
Yeah.
What other people call hell, we call home.
No, that's it. That is the
That's
phrase.
it.
That's
That
the
is
phrase I was trying to get to. Yeah.
So it's a place that was dark and light shines brightly.
Yeah.
So after 2 years of watching, Desi noticed that there wasn't a third place for people other than the saloons. There was no place for people to get. So he, having never drank coffee in his life,
Yep.
started a cafe.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that was the first thing that connected us.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
never had a cup of coffee when we started a roastery first, but when we filed for the LLC for our coffee company, I had never actually had a full cup of coffee.
That was down in Birmingham.
Yeah, yeah.
So in a sense, you're drinking coffee with a missional mindset.
Yeah.
So he starts a cafe and it becomes the life of this town.
Yeah.
So I'll let Desi describe his journey with Globe and starting.
What year was this when you first relocated?
Well, so Vita has been around for 20 years.
That's your coffee shop.
Yeah. BD Cafe is the coffee house.
BD.
VIDA.
Vita. Okay.
Yeah, Vita. VIDA, the letter E.
Got it.
Cafe, which means
Okay.
cafe.
It's Portuguese, right?
It's Portuguese, yeah.
Life.
Life and coffee.
Life and coffee.
Mhm.
Which was I don't know. The people didn't really care for it at the time when I opened it up. So I said, you know what you should do? You should call this Desi's One-Stop Coffee Shop or something like that. Like, no. So it was a long, we actually stumbled into a few people back in those days, it was me and a guy named Bryce and his family and my family. They didn't move there. They still lived down the valley floor. I moved there because Globe was any place, to be honest. That was my idea, Neil and I, and many of the people of our original team. Yeah, we were talking about this. So I just want I want to practice this and put it into practice. So Globe didn't have really that special designation of it being dark. I didn't know a lot of those things. We discovered those things after we moved.
Totally. Yeah.
And so it was any
you
place.
Kind of loved it.
Yeah, well, my wife and I actually got caught there one time. It's a place where there's only a couple of roads leading into it. And so it's literally like this place. It was the original. So in other words, we had the first governor came from Globe. First female governor came from Globe. It was originally going to be the capital of Arizona when Arizona became a state, because it had so much money running through it because of the copper and the silver mines. It's called the Copper Corridor.
Yeah.
It still has so much money. I mean, there's a train track goes right down through the middle of town, and every day they haul millions of dollars out of there, refined copper. So I didn't know a lot of that, but we pulled off there one time and then ended up buying this little tiny shack. That was only, I forget what we paid for, like $10,000 or something. Just wrote him a check that day. And then I used it as like a pseudo writer's loft retreat or something. And then eventually we had no reason to stay where we were. I wanted to practice what we were always talking about. And so I did. We moved there, so I didn't know what to do. I just prayer walked, doing a lot of that, the prophetic kind of idea of just walking. I just walked everywhere. Susie and I walked everywhere. Got very healthy from doing so, because it's like a canyon. It's like there's mountains on all sides of it.
How many people?
At the time, I think it was like 9,000 or so, but it is the county seat. In other words, the government offices for the county exist there, and it had a long history of that. And then up to that is the Apache Nation. So that's the San Carlos Apache. That's the original home of Geronimo. So it was very famous, Apache warrior. And so the Apache Nation butts up against it. And the Apache Nation is a nation. It's not like a reservation. And so, that's a whole different thing. But the limits, they bump up against them. So that was important to me, because I really believed prophetically that God wants us to reach the indigenous people. So that's a big thing to me. So anyway, so we did that. And then there was a coffee house there that burnt down. We lost a major 3-story building downtown, because it's mostly dilapidated. Electricity's bad everywhere back in those days. It was because the mines moved out in the 1970s. And then they only started moving back in about the time we came to refine the copper that they, or the tailings that they originally went through. And so that brought the mines back and so on and so forth. So we always considered it, you can't pinpoint yourself to doing it, but the coming of light, it affects things that are in the secular world. So at the time we were like, it was part of our belief system. Like, we're not calling this sacred, what was secular sacred. We just believe that the secular is sacred, depending on who steps into it.
Yeah, it is.
So we weren't, saying, hey, this is all bad and this is all good. We just know that humanity is always picked on in this world of, this present darkness is kind of what it is. So we just did that, and it wasn't many of us. Bryce was there. So we did, when we started the coffee house, I think the average price, because I did my research, it was like $135,000 to open up a coffee house. And I didn't have a job. So I think we opened up opening day of it having spent $13,000. And I had never drank coffee because I was raised LDS, when I was young. And so it just wasn't a thing that I did. And so I remember opening day where I had to run home because I forgot about, what am I going to put the brewed coffee on? Last time we bought an espresso machine, or I think we bought this coffee cart, and just starting from scratch. We rented a space, Bryce and I and a couple other people fix it up all the time.
What year was this?
This was 20 something years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. This Vita's 22 years old, I think. And so I went home. There was an old, like a bookshelf in my house, and I just dumped out the books. My wife's like, what's happening? And it's like, I forgot to put, I need these pots. I'll be back. Put them on something.
Yeah.
So that was like opening day. So it was kind of a silly endeavor. And then, it got to be, it was just people used to always say the same thing, and they still do to this day. They're like, we just love the spirit of this place. And so it grew bigger than the coffee house that got burned down a couple of years before I started. And then it just became, and we just kept adding art, like what you guys were talking about, like when you're working with kids, and you just meet people, and the spirit of the place, I love the spirit of this place because they had never seen it. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, added music to it, like live music, and so on and so forth. And then it prospered, but was always just in the black.
Yeah.
That's the world.
Never.
I told them, we have a little bike shop we do in Tampa.
It was like
and I
red,
every
black,
year it's
I don't know.
black, but never with a comma.
Yeah, and we didn't pay ourselves. Bryce and I didn't pay ourselves really, but in the beginning, we both just worked two shifts because we opened up at 6 and we closed at like 10. Yeah, because that was our
Get
idea.
some tips and
Yeah, you get tips and stuff. Yeah, you live off your tips and stuff. But Globe's a pretty cheap place to live because everything's less expensive there because the poverty nature of it. But then you just kept on going, and we had a lot of. It was very fulfilling, but a lot of hard work. You had so many holy things that would always happen there that you didn't see coming. People you meet and stuff. And so it was very prosperous for the missional side of us and what we wanted to do. And then one day a woman walked in and was like, she was a city clerk because City Hall was right there. Fire department is right across the street from the old Vita. We're not there anymore. Police station is right there. And so you always, one time just as a joke, because I was a big jokester as a barista. I did barista work for a long time. But the guy come up to the counter, he was a tourist, and he was like, so is this like, well, do people have guns? And so I said, hey, show of hands. How many people are currently packing? And so they're policemen in there off duty. And it was like 16 people inside that coffee house, but had sidearms. Does that answer your question? But the Globe is like that politics wise too. You kind of call people out in the street, shoot from the hip, try to gun them down first. But a city clerk came in and she said, I wanted to know if you would want to run for city council. I was like, no. The answer is no. Because in my own mind, I'm like, that was what I gave up. I don't no longer hold positions. I no longer, in Christianity, I no longer have salary. I don't draw from God. And I said, and I don't hold any kind of official position like that. I gave that up to be, to work on my prophetic giftedness. She was pretty insistent. She said, well, I already filled out all the paperwork for you to run for office. All you need to do is sign here. I said, how'd you fill out the paper? She said, I'm a city clerk. I have all your information. She said, I knew you weren't going to be a man who wanted to do so. And so I did. I said, okay. I, went home, prayed with about my wife. And I said, okay, next day, I said, okay, I'll sign it. But I won't run for office.
Won't campaign.
I won't campaign. I won't do that. I'm not going to make much of myself. He said, yeah, whatever. And so I lost that election because I didn't campaign. You can't win an election if you don't campaign. So I wasn't that, I was like, oh, good. I lost that election, man. Thank God for that. And then the next election cycle, which is only like 2 years later back then. Then, yeah, she asked me to run again, and I did. And I campaigned a little bit. We had a group of people. And so we won. I won that election because
What position?
it was city councilman.
Okay.
And so I won that election because the guy who held my position for 20 years died of a heart attack during the
How
election.
big's the council there?
During the election.
During the campaign.
Yeah. Every council, like, if you don't know that in politics,
God,
they're all the
like,
same, no matter how
we'll get
big or
you
small.
into
It's six
You
people.
don't have
There's
to
six.
campaign.
Yeah, there's six
I'll take care of it.
councilmen, then usually a mayor. You can replace that with a paid position of like city manager or supervisor. But in this case, the system we have, there's six people and a mayor,
Yep.
and then you pay for a city manager, and he does a lot. So in other words, the city manager works for the council as opposed to the city
Yeah.
manager running the council.
Mhm.
So it's a form of city government, municipal government. So we did that, and we won, and because there was all seats were replaced, and all of us, we kind of ran under one campaign to redo stuff, and so we did, and then it was a matter of like authority. You understood authority, and authority in the scripture that you're given a
Right.
position. And so for the most part, I listened for a long time, and then I started making movements, and I had a pretty good idea of small town revitalization, and so yeah, we just started changing things, and I always thought it was easy but in Arizona everybody plays checkers, which is a jump move game, but I just play chess, which is a long-term game. So I'm like, you sit back and they don't know, they're like, hey, how did you get those votes? You're like, don't worry about it. It's just so you get stuff done until you, in a way, you lead that council, and you help do it. But it is very wholesome, and you've got to fight a lot of fights. We fought against private prisons. We fought against all kinds of things, and you do those fights. And so overall, you do what my original idea was. You have the funds and stuff to say, well, let's clean up this city. Let's clean up its streets. You got sewers that you got to be in. You got water that you got to be in. So you actually have to have a plan that's municipally sound. And so you figured out that does have a cattle on 1,000 hills, and he can affect great change, even though nobody knows you don't brag about it. You're not trying to make much of yourself, but you end up saying, yeah, we can do this. And so then over time, pretty soon ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, then they're building new roads through it, fixing up because the highway runs right through it. But you can't claim that, but still you're like, no, because we're trying to bring light. And so you're like, and we need tourism. We need better. It's a tough road to get to Globe. Really, 2 lanes and through mountainous terrain, and it's all rough. And so now it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. And to this day, the city, I've been off council for a while, but the city does a really good job of, the mayor who exists right now, using New Vita as a base, because we restored a downtown building, got more involved in schooling. We have Monsoon Youth, which is, we work a lot with, young people in the arts, stuff and everything. It's all just a whole bunch of people doing a lot of stuff. And so it all works together towards good, but the mayor consistently does, rain or shine, does First Fridays, which is a huge, it's a historic downtown, huge downtown event. And Vita's right downtown, so we profit from it, as well as the times we don't profit from things. Vita.
This is a little bit different angle than, this is actually fantastic, because sometimes when we talk about building a city within a city, and we go, look, you're working in Alton, but you can't change Alton, is what we would say. It's Babylon always is going to be a predominance, And so I think sometimes when people would hear that from us, they might go, well, then I guess we don't do anything related to the civic or the government or whatever. We'll just build what we build. But this is a really good, some people need to hear
Well, like
this.
people come up and they say, oh my gosh, look at these. You guys have such wonderful trees downtown, and for Arizona. So you're downtown, you have Broad Street, which is a long
Tree
street.
would be a big deal.
Yeah, it's because, when I was head of the tree committee, which we literally, they had no committees at the time that, that you actually had power in your committees, because we saw it as committees should be above city council, and then the form of governments that you have, the fire chief and all these people, they're below you. But it's the citizen committees that should have it. So we ratified the tree committee, and we had a pretty good power, because in mining communities, they spend so much time underground that they lose the love of green things. And so they just saw a tree as being in their way. But like most of Globe is Oak Street and Maple Street and all Sycamore Street, because they had trees everywhere. But they cut them all down to use the support for the mines and stuff like that. So to reestablish that, then we built all these trees. But to this day at Vida, people come up at springtime, oh, these trees are so wonderful. You're like, we did like 28 trees downtown. Now they're beautiful. So
Let me tie those.
you got to beautify it.
One thing I love about your story, though, and we've said this a lot, is we don't go to the powers to make change, but they will come to us at some point. And that's the story. This happened in Birmingham too, and
I remember,
and it's happening here. And it will happen anywhere that you're architecting any kind of kingdom ecosystem. I love how you said it, Dezi. Anything secular can become sacred when we come in, because the kingdom comes with us. When that architecture starts to happen, I think the misunderstanding or the misarticulation of it is we have this kind of dominion mindset, or this maybe colonizer mindset. If we could just get a Christian in this,
If I had the steering wheel, or if the clamoring for power or whatever.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
so
get
it's got the power. Yeah,
But what I love.
Well, it's the reluctance, even like, I'm not doing that.
That's right.
It's
That's
like
right.
it's almost a prerequisite.
It's like a knee jerk thing.
Like, no, don't put that on me.
All the stories are Joseph, Daniel, David. They're all the same. It's like, no, this isn't. I don't want to be in this position.
Right.
But okay, I'll accept it. But even I know some of your story. Even in your acceptance, there was massive war.
Yes, it was you're waging war. Yeah,
even against your life.
Yeah, because I think Gila County and both the city of Globe, in terms of long-term management of, I think per capita, it was listed as the most corrupt county in America.
Right.
And you're like, but until you got involved in it, you're like, whoa, it really is. I think during the process, we indicted a federal judge. I was in the impetus in getting rid of 23 key city officials, including the city manager.
There were attempts on your life.
Yes.
So
you just got to go through all that.
I think that's the fun. Well, no. My point is who would want this? You think we want this? So that's the point we're making.
Well, but going back to what we were talking about, you have to redefine the ideas of what Christianity is. Because then when that stuff happens, then you're like, well, it's expectant. You're like, oh, I expected this. And I asked God to do this. So in a way, you're like, well, I'm only getting the desires of my heart, in that I get to be, I have an opportunity to be like all the loving people of, the New Testament, the Old Testament. Going, oh, could I be one of them? Could I be included, amongst that? And so it's a real opportunity that you either derive well-being from, or you don't.
But really, got to check on what you're shooting for.
Yeah. Be like Jesus. To be like Jesus is.
Right. I think I'm shooting for martyrdom.
Yeah.
It's a wholly different deal. What are you thinking, Neil?
Well, so I've watched all this happen. I mean, I was there. Dezi moved there, and for 2 years did nothing but watch and listen. I think he should do something. And then he starts a coffee shop, having never drank a cup of coffee. That's your plan, okay? And now you're running for city council, okay? But all along, what we see is that Dezi was listening to Jesus and doing whatever he said. And people started to come and join him, and they began to paint buildings, plant trees.
But would it be okay to say Because when you say things like that, they're absolutely right. And then they're also they're sort of elusive.
Who, what?
I'm about to say. So would it be okay? You were listening to God and you were doing what he says. But even in that, we could say but what he says is not what you think. It's just doing.
Right.
It's all found in
It's faith in
the
action.
day to day,
So,
right?
yes,
That's
that's a
all
lead
we
in
say.
the moment. It's not like God downloaded an
Exactly.
agenda that Desi was trying to follow all these years. Didn't come down off the mountain with the plan.
Right.
It was every day he'd wake up and say, what do I do now?
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Yep.
So that's began to unfold, and
But the
other,
manifestation of what do I do now
yeah,
was
Well,
what the clerk coming in that day.
Yeah.
It wasn't in
A lot of it comes to you.
Yeah, but I thought that's why we like ArcLike, because instead of animals coming 2 by 2, it's people that you need help. And if if you have a pretty small pool, like living even in a small town, then you're like, well, you do need help. And so, yeah, God tends to say, because of what you've done already by yourself, then I am going to send you help. And then from that help, you'll see your harvest come to pass.
But it gives people around you opportunity
Yeah.
to do meaningful work,
Yes.
take ownership of the condition of
Yeah,
their city.
but they have to do the same
sink their
thing.
teeth in.
They end up, being, oh man, you got 2 degrees and you're coming here and what are you going to do? You're going to work with chickens and goats and, taking care of stuff. And it becomes a true story. They find
I might
fulfillment.
butcher this story, but I remember Dr. Perkins sharing a story one time where I believe it was the executive director of CCBA for many years when he came to him the first time, couple degrees, advanced degrees, years of experience in community development. And he said, Dr. Perkins, I know Lawndale community in Chicago. I know your work. I know what you did with Dr. King. Like, I want to work with you. And he just hands him a broom and asks him to sweep the sidewalk for 2 weeks and never really talks to him for 2 weeks. And the guy's getting super frustrated. And I think after the 2 weeks, he gave him some yellow gloves and asked him to start cleaning the restrooms at the offices. And this went on for about 2 or 3 months. And once he realized, oh, this guy really does want to serve, that's when he said, hey, let's talk.
Yeah, we lose a lot of people. I mean, we live in the desert, so there's weeds everywhere. Almost, I think the Arizona state slogan is everything here can kill you. So the guy, these guys, people come out and they're like, they said, can I shadow you? I was like, no, that's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm busy working. If you want to shadow me, then yeah, I'm pulling weeds today. You want to pull weeds? And I can teach you a lesson from that, because, you don't need to be a lover of plants. You just need to be a hater of weeds. That's one of our slogans. And so, yeah, you're going to pull a lot of weeds if you're going to be here. And they just don't get it. And they're like, I'm wasting my time. I thought I would come here and be discipled. And like, how long do you think it would take? Because people have been here for years. And so we offer people like, you can be here for 3 days. And you'll pretty much figure it out, because there's nobody to talk to. Everybody's working in the field of the Lord. So you're like, if you can't make it through there, then you can come for 7 days. You can come for 7 days, and that'll usually be.
Other people lose people.
Oh, all the time. It's like the majority of it, like 80-20 principle. 80% you lose.
It's a working branch. So if you want to be discipled, you got to work.
Yeah, because we have property that the Apache tribe loans to us out on. We have 100 acres out there.
You need to hear this. 2 days ago, I'm sure Desi was washing dishes.
Yeah,
I'm sure he was sweeping up. I'm closing down a shop. I mean, everybody that's on his team, that's their life. They are pulling weeds. They are picking eggs up. They're literally doing the grunt work. Everybody, from top to, there's no top, there's no bottom. It's just.
I'm curious, after 20 some years of doing this, how many people would you say are in the family, like the real workers?
Well, probably, 30, maybe. But there's that's because we have to do that. Those are like, this is that family. They've been at it a long time. They're in it to win it. They're going to remain there, continue to do it.
They paid a price.
And they all have very important work that they're doing. That's pretty big in order to change a region.
Among that entire group is, would you say that that all of that group is like kind of covenant faith oriented? Like, is there like,
Yeah, they would all be able. I mean, it's fun to, because we don't often gather everybody together. We just don't have the time. But
no, but even just orientation. So I know, like in our own, we've got people like in the mix that
yeah,
that
no, these are
wouldn't
people
ever use that language.
who repeat the language. They
Okay,
repeat the
yeah,
language
yeah,
all the
Talking
time.
about the
Yeah.
spirit.
That
Yes.
core
The
base.
owner.
Yeah, and then you have
right.
beyond that all the people that all of us love.
I
and
see. Okay.
work with, which
Yeah.
is a huge number.
That's a
hundreds,
bigger
yeah,
number.
That's
Okay.
hundreds
what,
and
that's
hundreds.
what we.
That's
call
what I
the
was trying to
workers.
clarify.
Yes, but we
like,
don't. I mean, they're not. We don't actually invite them. You have
the
to.
core that right.
You have to survive long enough to
Do
get
you
in that
have,
group.
do you have some common spiritual rhythms that kind of keep everybody feeling together?
Ecclesial stuff.
Yeah, we really do. I mean, most of it's just we almost there's a freedom that we have in terms of, so every gathering that you have with those people, if you're just with three people having coffee, then it tends to, have that kind of rhythm. And that's part of our rhythm. But the elements of the faith, we do very freely and very wholly. So we, like, who was it? You're saying just early music. We're at that place where we have so many great musicians who have come there to live, and they're a part of our community. But at this point in time, they create new songs, but in order to express them, it's only when we get together as like those 20 people and their kids or whatever. And so we have that, we do communion, we do lots of baptisms because we're very free at it. We call it more like I'm all in. So you can, you have these rebaptisms and stuff, and people want to initiate
The
something.
people that come to faith in your movement, they just.
It's more is the unforced rhythms of those practices. We don't force them, but they happen all the time.
Yeah.
We try to
Love feast, all those
That's
things.
another principle that so many want to turn into a formula.
Yeah.
And not only is it impossible, but I would say, at the expense of sounding extreme, well, you've just ruined it.
Yeah.
It's now ruined.
Yeah. Back when I first started, when I first stepped out of conventional church, I had a mentor friend of mine. His name is James Hofer. He was like a Lutheran, priest who had kind of started like a more free, Lutheran movement stuff. We were close friends. We met in like cell church days, back in cell church days. And he was really cool. But I had never done it before, but he would just I remember he had this Volvo, one of those Volvo wagons, and we just park at a parking lot. So Dezi, it's good to see you. And then, or we'd just be driving around. He'd just be like, "So, dear Lord God, Heavenly Father," I'm like, oh, are we praying? We're like, we pray? Where'd you come up with that? And then he would just do this whole holy, almost priestly version like prayer. It was so cool. And I learned that, the unforced rhythm of grace from him.
Yeah.
But he had this very kind of graceful and merciful kind of thing. And then I just set out to kind of find it and apply it to the movement that we have in Globe.
And it actually makes like vertical expressions like song or prayer. It makes it.
Yeah, we do a sing song.
It makes it good again.
Yeah.
It just makes it good again. And I think we're all kind of on that search of what we've been talking some this weekend, just about the early days of knowing Christ and encountering his grace and how everything was good.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. If somebody brought in a ribbon, give me the ribbon.
Yeah.
Whatever you got.
So we're surrounded by those kind of people.
If everybody's falling out, make me do it. How do I do it? I don't know. And most of the time it didn't work, but whatever anybody's doing, but then as you move, stuff starts to become a little more complex.
But you can't change a region without having that. I still know.
Having what?
Having a group of people like that around you.
A group of people that are
In it to win it. Yeah, they're in that, that kind of space with you. And the language does change them. And so they, even from the very foundation of that language, they're all still the same way. Well, we don't proselytize. We don't do, I don't need you to believe what I believe, nor for me to believe it. So I'm doing this out of my belief. But then I expect you to. I
This is
expect you
common.
to.
This is, it seems like everybody's story. We also, interestingly, in the book, because we get asked so much about the formula, people are trying to picture like, okay, when you're trying to change your region, like, is it 500 people? Is it 300? And so Taylor and I were talking over like, let's just change like even the numeric metrics. So I think we put in there like, this would be a good goal. Try to find, I think we said 15 to 60 people that would really commit to an area. And we made some
Forever.
comments, yeah, just,
Forever.
but
That's hard.
actually, we haven't really
Forever's a very
seen
short
60.
time for a lot of
We've
people.
seen a lot more of like
25,
20s, 30s, 40s are like really the engine
Mhm.
behind these movements.
Well, you know,
Well, normally, those kinds of ratios are, that kind of math isn't something we calculate, and we discover it in the digging.
And it's really, it seems like the ones that, it's hard to get that many people to really commit to a
It
way of
is.
life.
Yeah.
So most are going to come through and be inspired and then move on. But
yes.
the ones that become the family, really, the
Well,
lifers.
like we always say, like, because it's a common thing, so we had to approach it. But because people will come to us, oh, you know, man, yeah, I really thought, but you know, I didn't know that it was going to be this hard. I didn't know that, you know, the spiritual darkness. We told you that ahead of time when you came to visit many times. And they're like, so, you know, I just approached something that's it's just the last straw. And I'm like, okay, but we're not going to allow you to say that because it insults everybody who had that last straw a long time ago. You know, so you can't say it's the last straw. You're leaving on the first straw. Just know that. It's not the last straw. Because you're not allowed to go out and tell your friends that it was the last straw. That's the first straw.
Conventional church expressions in your.
Yeah. Well, I think
Why?
a globe is like over church.
Here's why I asked that, because one thing I want to point out, because we kind of left it, and I just want to say it before we're done, is I've noticed this about you from the very first time you spent time together. Is you guys, I don't know your family there, but y'all have transcended something that I do feel like we're still wading through. And it's in your church expressions, like the familiarity. It's almost like someone who's been abused in a marriage. This is a crude analogy, but someone who's been abused in a marriage and then they get remarried, when that spouse does things that remind them of the gaslighting or the abuse or the toxicity, but it's actually good. They can't practice it. They have a hard time wading through it. Your songs, your prayers, your communion, your baptisms, it's all, you know, in the same stream of what we've seen in the conventional Western church that we actually don't really want to be a part of anymore. That is what I'm saying, making sense?
Yeah.
But you've transcended it where you don't even think about that.
No, we
stuff
don't.
anymore. You just are able to pray vertically. I know there's more definitions of prayer, but you're able to, like, you know, our Father who art in heaven, pray. You're able to sing, do sing-alongs. Because I know in our hearts, we all know those are good things.
Yeah.
They were once good, but they've been so monetized, so commercialized, and so stolen from us that I confess, like, we have a hard time even participating in them at all.
Yeah.
We do. It's still something that's hard for me to go to a worship service.
But not there.
Well, they won't have.
No, we don't do
It won't be that. It will be different. It'll be spontaneous. It'll be. So I describe these guys. I say, okay, listen, and this is helpful. People do not understand this, but I'll say, okay, in Globe, they don't have a single regularly scheduled meeting. There is none. Now, you guys, of course not. The rest of Christianity, they can't. That just blows their mind. And then I'll say, but the people that are there are disciples of a whole other level.
Yeah, that's
of
right.
living. They are surrendered to Christ. They've died to themselves and they're living for Him while they pick eggs, while they pull weeds, while they wash dishes, and they're resigned to do that for life. They're on another level.
Yeah.
But there's a left. Keep going.
But you can't You can't have that
Yeah, that's right.
with regularly scheduled meetings and an agenda.
Thank you.
So
That's
you-
that's what I want
You
to
would say, you can't, as Taylor framed it, you cannot make narrow things wide.
Yeah.
It's just like you have to keep pushing to the narrow.
So I would say though, the disciples that are there are the most highly fruitful disciples I know. And they've done this without a single regular scheduled meeting. So we can sing and pray. That's not what bothers me when I go to a worship
I know.
service.
It's we stand
It's the
as soon
performance.
as like it's
mechanical.
it's odd. Like it's
Am I-
it's time to
am I not-
stand and it's
I
like
always thought I'm the only one that when they say everyone stand.
I will
heart
not.
drops.
I'm like I
Me
can't.
too,
I don't.
man.
I got to get out of here.
And
I have a
it's-
real.
I will not be doing that.
There is
It's good to hear that. I was
That's
like,
my
something's
job.
wrong with me. I'm like, so
There's a level of wisdom that I'm nowhere near, that you guys have been able to transcend it's not abuse, that's not the right word, but the analogy that I gave, the pain from, we should take it on as an exercise to think of a proper analogy. But when we make fun or poke fun at certain things, it's not the thing. It's
Well-
not the songs, it's not the melodies, it's the practice.
It's literally why we changed the beginning of the book to this sort of real surfing analogy of all these San Jose, Silicon Valley people that have flooded that really beautiful, pure surf culture. And so they got blue boards all over the water. Blue boards represents people that are just kind of wannabes, but as soon as the economy
rental
changed,
board.
The rentals, yeah,
boards,
yeah.
But the local that was kind of speaking into that, and Mark, he just said, but the reality is we still got to surf. Like the ones of us that
yeah.
that
Really
live the
wanna surf.
life.
So you
can't
guys
get
are
the blue borders
serving.
out of there. You could, but you
Freely.
can't surf.
And I would say my kind of discipline right now is how do I get back to surfing freely
For the love of it.
for the love of it?
Mhm.
Like when I see so many, and this sounds so pretentious, but I'm not pointing at individuals. I'm pointing at a system. The blue boards are not people. The blue boards are a system. If anything, people are just the victims, if you will, of the blue board system. The people coming in from San Jose are just as meaningful.
And they're trying to enjoy the water.
Well, and by the way, you talked about those first 2 years and ribbon or whatever. It's culture, and so when you just come to faith and you're open, whether you're in this community or it's time to stand, sit, kneel, like this, it's you're discipled into a path. Like you absorb that culture basically. And it's like, I think for me, like I almost think of it as like an allergy, like, but I guess I would have said, I'd say a lot of times that allergy I think is associated with like what feels almost like these religious constructs, institutions, whatever. It feels like, I almost want to like overstate this, like say like because I love Jesus or because the kingdom is so real and serious, this is a scandal. Like it feels like it's so upsetting to me, like because we've completely missed the whole thing. And so for me, like a lot of times I'm like, that allergy feels like, but I do have the same enviousness because it's like, there is the music. It's like playing music is beautiful, but if you bastardize that into a product, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, but like that thing is for me the best way I can express. Like it's like anger. It's like, man, but it's all of these trappings.
But you can see
Like what I think of is like the early church. Like literally, I think like Rome, like goes empire. Like the church is like official institution. It's like it ceased to exist. Like that. That's it. That's a
It's
wrap.
been replaced.
No,
Yeah.
Right.
You're saying it really well, and
Yeah.
I guess okay,
Like
now,
back to the catacombs or
what
whatever.
I'm
like,
saying,
That
and I'm following that by saying, I long I want to surf again, and we surf, but
But you
That's
know
what I'm
what?
saying, like, out of all this.
No, it's
even,
good.
Even our frustration, the remedy is this, like, I'm just super inspired, like, to hear that you guys have been doing this all these years.
yeah.
We've been doing what we're doing, but this is a new season for me. So the Alton story started at age 50. And lots of that was like, it's new. And I'm like, oh, this seems like a waste of time. But it's just,
You know what's there's so much fun stuff with doing this that really embiggens and enlivens our spirits. You know, like is if you're in the community. But there's not a year goes by that January goes by where so we don't have any money and we have no help. I mean, so we do so many projects. We have 100 acres on the Apache Nation. We brought back sheep into that region for the first time since the cattle and sheep wars.
Okay, back up,
So-
back up, time out. Okay, so I just realized context. We had a coffee shop, and I went on
Yeah, we
city
have other.
council, and then I was like, wait,
You
there's
haven't heard,
chickens.
you haven't heard.
No, I was
that.
like,
Yeah.
can we just
Yeah.
get like a
We have a
give me, like,
regenerative
the
ranch.
sketch
Yeah.
the
well, I'm already thinking we have to have a part 2.
Oh,
of
yeah.
this.
Yeah, but anyway,
because I'm like, there's so much we're
No,
not
no, but-
talking
but-
about.
no, what I was going to say is you have these fun times because there's no time where you guys were talking about earlier about just dropping what you're doing, with your youth stuff and say, let's reimagine this whole thing and just redo it. So not a year goes by where everyone in that, in our community, included all the people around us, because we have workers at Vita who are, on those concentric circles. And they're just like, so I was thinking the other night and I was praying about it and then I really feel God spoke to me. We should probably buy the building 3 down. We don't have any money. Where are we going to buy that building? But we didn't have any money to buy this building. True that. So, or we don't have any. So it's all these new business. They just flow so freely, but not any period of time goes by, maybe even 6 months for somebody's like, I really feel like we should do this. So we have Monsoon Youth, which is a thing. We have SYMTP, which is summer youth program. We have a schoolhouse, I don't know, 3 1/3 acres, which runs as like a micro, that's like a little tiny regenerative ranch.
Are these all different entities?
No, they all belong to us.
Like a
Only we
nonprofit?
do, yes. So we have several not-for-profits, but none of them currently. We just got rid of the religious nonprofit that we had. Now they're all secular not-for-profits.
Just a 501c3.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And they operate as like a hybrid. In fact, we struggle. We have good lawyers, within our system and stuff, and they are the ones who do those because the state, the feds, and everybody is like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So
And so they're like
Were
they're
you
like a
talking
secular
about-
hybrid nonprofit.
that's all of ours. This is
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a 501c3.
Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people are doing it.
or whatever. Yeah.
But I didn't want to
Lots
imply.
of people aren't doing it.
I know, and that's what I would like to encourage people to do it.
So do we. Yeah, we're like, why
Because you get the cattle on 1,000 Hills, where like because of the property we have out on the reservation, and you see a lot more like the Apache tribe actually owns the land and everything. We just they just give it to us.
But see, if I can just say,
Please.
a Native American nation doesn't usually ask you
Right.
to take this land.
Yeah, because it was a dump site.
That's not a normal thing.
Right.
That is something where people have loved them,
Yeah.
served them, brought solutions
Yeah.
to
For
them,
decades.
and empowered them in those solutions, and they then invite them to come on. And this is an amazing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, even to be welcomed on
Yeah.
the property, not given one, just to be welcomed.
Yeah, and we employ lots of tribal members on that property. All the employees we have. And
So on
when we
this
say
land-
me, I don't really do any of that work. I don't. I mean,
Is there some sort of like residence on this land? 100 acres,
Mhm.
you got to have like.
Yeah, most of those are tribe. We'd only do, I think, as a missional thing. Eric, who runs it, and Chandler, who does a lot of this stuff. So the only people who reside there are tribal people.
Nice.
Yeah, because we don't do anything with that. I mean, it's
But
12,
it's-
12
and it's
miles away.
Nearby. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's for
It's
The
theirs.
nation,
It
it's for the
is,
nation,
yeah.
it's not for.
I think last year they did, I just, I'm not good at these kind of things, but I think they distributed 93,000 pounds of produce.
That they produced.
No, like it'd be, because they're just starting out.
Oh.
So all of our crops and stuff have been growing over a period of time. So they supplement it. So like the USDA and people,
Okay,
that's what I'm talking
okay.
about being not for
So they're
profit.
distributing.
So yeah, it's a distribution center, and so they are capable of doing that. Most
it's
of it,
also
all
regenerative
fresh
farm.
fruit. Yeah, yes.
So you're hustling at all these. None of these are making a ton of money, but they're just making enough.
Well, that makes pretty good money. But they don't, again, it's all not for profit, so it's not like anybody's getting paid a lot of money. But it does allow us, or does allow them. I say us because I do have to.
So here's the thing,
Yeah.
artists, pioneers. We'll finish up with this today, but Dezi's almost 30 years into this. There's been attempts on your life. You essentially, we can say you almost died 2 years ago, but you were pronounced dead.
Well.
Came back, God healed you miraculously. We'll hear that story later, but I was, obviously you were right with him, but I was walking with you through that. We were texting.
I know that.
I remember the picture when it's like, oh, okay, I told my wife and she cried. I told my wife, like, this will be the last time we ever talk to Dezi, and you're still a practitioner. So there's an element here, a principle. We never stop practicing. We never move into a realm of now we're experts and sages on stages where we. So I want people to understand, like, the reality of Luke 9, or the depth of Luke 9 in this calling of actually giving up your life. It's not a, deny your longing for potato chips today. It's you're giving up your life and you're saying, no, here's my life. We all believe it's better. None of us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you find it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't believe it was a better life.
Well, and it is, there are, I find myself in circles sometimes where it feels like, oh, y'all don't actually think this is better. Like, you want to go do something that you think is better.
Mm-hmm.
We think this is better. And we don't feel like we're, like we're cursed with this calling.
No.
What's Hebrews? We're on a better mountain.
Yeah.
Better city, better mountain.
Unshakable kingdom.
We always do a thing at the end of these where we figure out what we've talked about and try to title the podcast. But you both shared that you got started without really having developed a taste for coffee. So I'd like to throw some out, like maybe it's entitled Practitioners Developing a Taste for Mission or something.
Before we wrap, can you? I'm just this.
I try to wrap it up.
No, it's a good wrap, but I gotta unwrap. I still got. I'm like, I want to talk a lot more, but we'll do another one or something. But you said something at the very beginning. I think you used the word like success in some way. I forget exactly how, but like kingdom success or something like that it stuck out. And as we're talking about like this,
Didn't stick out that much. You didn't even remember it.
the choice, well, the word success is what stuck out. And the idea of like this giving up a life and then finding this life and like the embrace of the work, the process, the practitionership, the building. I just wanted to ask you to I don't know, how do you think about like process? I want to say versus results, you know what I'm saying? Because like these things happen, right? There is like fruit, but like in terms of orientation, do you understand what I'm asking you?
Not yet, but go ahead.
Not yet. Okay.
do you ever
does
have
it-
goals?
Yeah. Are you counting something? Does it matter? Or versus like it's about the work versus the like, how much do you think about results?
Specifically what you said is
Metrics.
I receive my praise from the heavenlies.
Something happened
Yeah.
here. like in hindsight, you're like, look at all this amazing stuff that happened. But like, I'm just curious, like how you think about
Metrics.
fruit metrics, like versus like just the labor of love
Yeah.
kind of thing. Does it make sense now?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So is that the question?
That is what I'm asking. Yeah, I just wanted you to like, I don't know, speak to it. I have a hunch about it, but I'm like,
Oh, really? What is your hunch? I want to hear your hunch first.
well, my hunch is more of my own conviction, I guess. My hunch is I like this feels it feels familiar. But I think I'll just tell you, like for me, it's like that has nothing to do with me. Like what come what may, chips fall where they may. Like I like really I want to serve the work.
The joys in the word.
I want to do the work. I actually don't want I want to play forever. Like and
So I think I get you now. So for us, I think as a community, and our communities, we call it EKC, just endless knot communities, and we have them all around the world. Pockets of people and stuff that are practicing the same kind of practices, even and oftentimes they get them first from God before, and we just put words to them or help them put words to them in their own language.
Lens and a language.
Yeah. And so I think the metric, if there is a metric to it in God's organic nature, is that we don't start at a false starting point. In other words, so we don't begin that I don't decide what I want, in life, because I think we are so like programmed in this programmatic construct of a world that I think we have to be honest and just say, like, I need to be saved all over again. And so that's where we begin, so that we're like, dear Lord God, just, because he knows we all want the desires of our heart. Only I don't think we really know what the desires of our heart are, but he does.
no, this is
And so he's so huge, so beyond any kind of human experience, but beyond the universes or whatever you would call them. He's so far ahead or be above that he has the ability to fit you into something. So if you join into a community that I think right now he's big on his organic nature as more than his structural nature, because that we've done a lot of that. I think he's really big on saying, let me show you how to do this, because if you do this and you join this, I can grant you the desires of your heart all over again, because you don't know what you want. And so you can fit into that, knowing that most of us want to see the kingdom effective here on earth before we go to the kingdom there. And he knows that. Only he says, I'm going to fit you in this way based on who I created you to be so far, how, the way you were born. He's got it all figured out. And so he can guide you. But the hardest part is that if you think about joining a community that's like that, and you're looking to come into it and say, hey, part of my desire to see a community and be a part of the community is I'm looking at it to see if this is going to fit. Like, if you're doing that, then don't join. You're just going to mess it up. But if you want to join a community that says, wow, why did God
always going to be people that are drawn to you as people? They will impose their desires on you. It is a weight.
Yeah. And you're like, and we don't suffer that. And it came up earlier on in our conversation. I said, what? It just struck me as like profound. I said, a lot of people will say, oh, we suffer because of our faith and we suffer this, but we use the word suffering different in our movement. We like, oh, I don't suffer that.
no allow.
Yeah, or allow. Yeah, it's more like, oh, I know. So you're like, oh, I'm sorry that's happened to you, but yeah, I don't really suffer that, that kind of problem, because it's pretty minuscule. You're like, oh man, I'm really suffering being here. Like, okay.
Even people will literally say, like, we just feel like we need to find a really good church to worship at.
Yeah.
There we go. We don't suffer that.
Yeah, we don't suffer that. Exactly. I don't, because I'm so far. You're not just removed from it. You're like, no, our worship is so wonderful to me. Again, you don't have to believe that, but so that's the metric we use is, are you a better person because of what you're currently doing, and are you fulfilled in the work that you're doing? So I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, close personal friend, brother, Mike Kim, and he does GED and out on the res, he oversees most of their education out there. And he was just a pastor in whatever he come out the Loma or somewhere up someplace.
Palo Alto, near Palo Alto.
Yeah, Palo Alto. Yeah, he was in Palo Alto. And he came out here, and man, he didn't know that he would end up being here after all these years. They've been out with us for a long, long time. And he's just like, oh, just living the dream. And you go anywhere, like you just walk down streets of Globe with, Mike Kim, and, because there's a lot of tribal people, within the city, because we're right up against each other. Hey, Mr. Kim, how you doing? Good to see you. You can't hang out at the coffee house with Mike before pretty soon you just have to leave because Mike's just surrounded by tribal people.
Yeah.
Who he knows and loves and has raised up so much. So he's living his dream, but he never could have saw that being a pastor of a conventional church. It's like, Palo Alto.
There's a chance we'll be together again in a month or two. We might could talk some more in person like this, but if not, we just want to do this, listen back to it and see like what are a couple of threads that we can pull out of this conversation and maybe go a little bit deeper. But you guys, Neil, I don't even remember, we were talking the other night when we met. I think it was like 2015 maybe. But I do know it was before we really connected because you sent me a picture of you two, I think at Black Coffee with Trey
Right, yeah.
in Long Beach.
Right.
And man, you two guys, Dezi Baker, Neil Cole, have just been, I guess the easiest word is heroes for us. And now,
I love it.
No, sorry, that takes on a different connotation. Don't worry about it.
But you know that it's real, and you felt this way about people. And I just want to honor you guys and say that now we're friends, so
Yeah.
that's meaningful. And I think that this has been the most valuable part of our time here for me personally.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Cutting it out. And
Yeah, it's good times hanging with the people who are in it to win it.
We should stop because I know us three have to pee.
I have to be so bad.